a full ride to Harvard. On her graduation day, my dad proudly announced she would inherit everything, a new Tesla and a $13 million mansion. I was left with nothing, sitting quietly in the back while they laughed at my expense. They thought they had successfully erased me, reducing my life to a cruel punchline. But their smiles completely vanished when a mysterious stranger in a tailored suit walked up to me, handed me a sealed black envelope, and whispered, "Now's time to show them who you really are." Inside that envelope was a certified check for $47 million and a hidden truth that would ruin my family forever. Follow my story until the end to see how the tables turned and how far my story has reached. My name is Amber, and I am 27 years old. For as long as I can remember, my life has been defined by a label I never earned, handed down to me by the very people who are supposed to love me unconditionally. My parents always called me the dumb one. I wasn't incapable. I just didn't fit into the rigid, corporate box my parents built for our family. I struggled with calculus in high school and preferred painting to reading financial charts. To my parents, that made me a genetic failure. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Lauren, was the undisputed golden child. She was a walking trophy, a straight-A student who eventually landed a full ride to Harvard. Our dinner table conversations were a predictable, exhausting routine of my parents praising Lauren's brilliant future while openly mocking my minor setbacks. If I got A B on an exam, my dad would shake his head and say, "It's a good thing you have pretty hair, Amber, because you'll need to rely on it." I became the invisible black sheep, a ghost living in a mansion built on intellectual snobbery. I stopped trying to defend myself, letting their cruel jokes wash over me while I quietly worked a modest job at a local art gallery. I accepted my role as the family disappointment, believing that as long as I kept my head down, I could eventually escape their constant toxicity. But I never imagined just how far they would go to publicly destroy my dignity, or how soon they would regret it. The tension reached its breaking point on the day of Lauren's graduation party. My parents had spared no expense, transforming our backyard into a lavish gala filled with hundreds of wealthy guests, Ivy League alumni, and family friends. It was a sea of expensive suits and polite laughter, all organized to celebrate the family's ultimate triumph. As a painful reminder of my standing in this family, I was deliberately relegated to the very back of the crowd, dressed in a simple blouse, completely isolated while everyone else swirled around the guest of honor. Then, my father stepped onto the stage, tapping his glass to command attention. The crowd went silent as he beamed with pride, gesturing toward my sister. "Today, we celebrate true excellence," he announced, his voice booming through the microphone. "Lauren has proven she has the brilliance to carry our family legacy forward. And because of that, her mother and I have decided she will inherit everything. A brand new Tesla is waiting in the driveway, and ownership of our $13 million mansion will be officially transferred to her name." The applause was deafening, but my father wasn't done. He looked past the cheering crowd, locking his cold eyes directly onto me in the back row. "We believe in rewarding intellect," he added with a sharp, mocking smile. "And let's be honest, we all know Amber doesn't have the brains to handle this kind of true wealth." A wave of cruel giggles rippled through the audience. The humiliating laughter felt like a physical blow, suffocating me as hundreds of judgmental eyes turned to stare at my burning face. My mother gave a smug, dismissive nod from the front row, completely satisfied with my public degradation. I gripped the edge of my chair, preparing to slip away unnoticed into the shadows of the estate and never look back. But just as the whispering reached its peak, the heavy glass doors of the patio slid open, cutting through the mockery. An unfamiliar man in a flawlessly tailored, dark charcoal suit walked out onto the lawn. His commanding presence instantly hijacked the room's energy, causing the elite guests to step aside in confusion. Ignoring my parents, my sister, and the stage entirely, the man walked with absolute purpose straight down the center aisle. He stopped right in front of my isolated table in the back row, locking his intense eyes onto mine. Before anyone could utter a word of protest, he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a thick, matte black envelope, and slid it gently into my trembling hands. Bending down slightly, he whispered in a low, resonant voice that vibrated through the sudden silence. "Now's time to show them who you really are." He turned on his heel and vanished back through the gates before my father could even demand his identity. With the entire party watching in stunned, breathless silence, I tore open the seal, pulling out a certified cashier's check made out to me for exactly $47 million. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the impossible sequence of numbers stamped onto the official paper. $47 million. The crisp, clean check felt heavy in my hand, glowing under the afternoon sun while the surrounding crowd remained completely paralyzed by confusion. Beneath the check lay a folded, formal document printed on heavy parchment paper, bearing the gold-embossed seal of a prestigious, multinational corporate legal firm. With trembling fingers, I smoothed out the letter and began to read the typed words silently. The truth unfolded like a sudden lightning strike. This staggering fortune hadn't appeared out of thin air. It had been left to me by my late grandfather, Charles. He was the brilliant, self-made visionary who had originally built the foundations of our family's immense wealth, a man who had passed away when I was just a young girl. According to the legal document, Grandfather Charles had spent his final years quietly watching how my arrogant parents treated me. He absolutely despised the toxic, conditional love they showed to Lauren while constantly belittling my worth. Knowing his own children were too greedy and short-sighted to be trusted, he bypassed them completely. He placed his primary corporate assets into a private, ironclad trust, specifically designated for me. The legal letter explicitly stated that the trust was designed to mature and transfer full ownership to me on this exact date, completely hidden from my family until the final trap was sprung. A heavy, suffocating silence blanketed the entire backyard as I stood up from my isolated table, holding the crisp black envelope and the staggering multi-million-dollar check tightly in my hands. My father, recovering slightly from the sudden interruption, stepped off the stage and marched toward me, his face twisted in annoyance. "What is that ridiculous stunt, Amber?" he demanded loudly, trying to regain control of his audience. "Who is that man, and what garbage did he just hand you?" Without saying a single word, I stepped forward and held the certified check directly in front of his eyes. My mother and Lauren hurried over, their smug, triumphant smiles still firmly intact. But the moment my father's eyes locked onto the official document, his arrogant expression instantly melted away. The color completely drained from his face, leaving him looking pale and suddenly frail. He stumbled back a step, his jaw dropping open in sheer, unadulterated horror. "47 million?" he whispered, his voice cracking so loudly that the nearby guests gasped. My mother aggressively snatched the paper from his hand, her eyes darting frantically across the gold-embossed legal seals. Lauren leaned in, her Harvard pride vanishing into a look of pure panic. But the real devastation was yet to come. I turned the parchment paper over and read the secondary clause of my grandfather's trust aloud for everyone to hear. The legal text dropped a catastrophic bomb. The $13 million mansion we were standing in, along with the family business my parents had just proudly promised to Lauren, didn't actually belong to them. They were entirely owned by Grandfather Charles's primary holding company, the exact company that had just been fully transferred into my name. My father dropped his glass, the expensive champagne shattering against the stone patio, mirroring the sudden destruction of his pride. The crowd of elite guests began whispering frantically, their judging eyes shifting completely away from Lauren and locking onto me. My parents had spent decades living a lie, funding their extravagant lifestyle on the back of credit lines tied to a holding company they never truly owned. Now, the mask was completely ripped off. Desperate to protect their status, my mother's fake hostility instantly turned into a desperate, groveling smile. She stepped closer, reaching out to touch my arm with synthetic affection. "Amber, darling, please," she whispered, her voice trembling so the guests wouldn't hear. "There's obviously been a huge misunderstanding. We are a family, and we have to stick together. Your grandfather always loved a good surprise, but surely you'll be a team player," and back, forcing her hand to drop, and looked at them with absolute clarity. "A team player?" I replied, my voice carrying clearly over the silent lawn. "Just 5 minutes ago, You stood on that stage and told everyone here that I didn't have the brains to handle true wealth. You tried to make me an invisible beggar in my own home. I looked at Lauren, who was staring at the ground, her Harvard degree powerless against the reality of my grandfather's real will. Turning back to my parents, I delivered the final, crushing blow. According to the legal rights transferred to me today, I am freezing all company accounts. And as for this $13 million mansion, you have exactly 30 days to pack your things and vacate my property. 3 months have passed since that unforgettable graduation party, and the dust has finally settled on my family's empire of lies. True to my word, I didn't back down. My parents and Lauren were forced to pack up their luxury lives and vacate the mansion, moving into a cramped, modest apartment across town. Without the holding company's endless credit lines to fund her, Lauren had to take out massive student loans just to finish her Ivy League education, learning the hard way that a title means nothing without humility. As for me, I used my $47 million inheritance to establish an independent network of art galleries and creative foundations, proving once and for all who truly had the brains to build a lasting legacy. I am no longer the invisible black sheep or the family disappointment. I am Amber, a woman who reclaimed her dignity and rewrote her own destiny. Now, I want to hear from all of you who have followed my journey until the very end. What would you have done if you were standing in my shoes? Would you have given them a second chance? Or would you have walked away exactly like I did? Go. Make sure to click on the final screen where I've left 2 other incredible stories that will completely surprise you.